Nick's in the village, and Tatum would be at the piano up top, and he heard Mel, and he leaned over to Mel and he said, "When you grow up, you're going to be number one."
Oh, really?
And he was. He played the piano like he was invented with it, you know.
Wow. I mean, one
He
should.
was a natural player.
Now he played with Benny. Who else did he play with? I know he
Benny,
played with Benny.
yeah, he was big in influencing all of Benny's things, you know.
Yeah.
There was another guy, Jess Stacy, that was around at that time too.
He was like a plumber next to these guys.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. He played one or two things that the guys who liked him would say was great. But you know, Mel must have. It's probably with Mel as he probably said rotten things about him, you know.
Right.
So Mel was not a great cat to be around.
Really, he was like a nasty kind of person at times.
But he played. Have you ever heard his various records of The World is Waiting for the Sunrise? There's about 4 records of it. One more breathtaking than the other.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, I got to check those out. Thank you. Tell me about those.
Right. To this day, I'm inspired by him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the thing with personalities I've found that's kind of interesting is there was a story about Bird that he was up in New Hampshire, and at this point he didn't take a band on the road because there was danger that they wouldn't get paid, and he was going out as a single. So this guy had hooked up a rhythm section, and he'd gotten the local guys in New Hampshire. He hadn't even gotten the Boston guys. So Bird had a rhythm section that he didn't, and they weren't really making it. So he told to the promoter, he said, "Look, man, I can't make it with these guys. Do you think you can get me? Let's get some cats up from Boston." And the guy said, "But you know, it means so much to them. They were really responsible for getting you up here. And the piano player has a day job. He does this, and he's just a wonderful guy. He's got 4 children. He's got this." And Bird says, "Yes, I mean, I'm sure they're very nice guys and very fine gentlemen. But tomorrow night, just get me 3 pricks that can play."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know if that's true, but there is. I mean, Albert Daly was, I believe, the character Fat Albert was based on him, because Albert could take the happiest moment and and make it into a real drag, but you loved him anyway.
Yeah.
But you know,
Yeah,
Joe Albany.
I have had the other person in life to me who was most inspirational was basically the greatest arranger of the 20th century was Robert Farnon. And he turned out to be the one guy who was a genius to know as a musician and also a genius to know as a wonderful man. Great man. He did more to influence the writers in the 20th century than anybody.
Really?
Yeah. Al, Mandel, Billy May, even Mancini, we would never admit it. But Bob Farnon was the orchestrator of the 20th century.
Was he someone that people would go to study with, or did they learn just from the work that he did?
I'm so sorry that I never went, because I did ask him. I said, you know, I took a lot of nerve. I said, "Bob, can I come for a month to Guernsey?" You know, where he lived in Guernsey.
Guernsey's in England, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I said, "Can I spend a month with you?" He said, and I never forgot this. He said, "With the greatest pleasure." I said, "Well, yeah." So you remember something like that, you know? But I never got there.
You didn't get there. Yeah, there's always those regrets, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
Benny Carter invited me to his house. He said, "When you're in LA,
Yeah.
You got to stop by and come over and hang out. And I was busy when I got to LA. The things I didn't have time to. He was on the other side of LA, and it was a whole day to get there. And
Oh, well,
I could have walked there.
I covered Benny. I did a whole album of his tunes. I did a solo piano version. It was the best piano playing I've ever done. I don't know if you had the time to listen to it.
Really, this is Benny's tunes.
That uh, uh, I learned him through doing that album because I did about 15 of his tunes.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to hear that.
But I should. But Bob, oddly enough, was not a natural songwriter. He was an orchestrator of the first order, is what he was. And when I'm talking about Nelson Riddle and all of the writers of the 20th century, he heard everything. He heard everything he ever did.
Wow.
He used to sit down in a room, no piano, no, sit down and write 45 minutes of music. Perfectly.
Wow.
He heard
You know,
it.
another person that you knew,
Put it all there. Put it all there.
another person that you knew, that you do a beautiful version of one of his tunes, which I never heard the depth of that song before I heard your version the other day of that, is Springsville. It's the record. It's the song that opens the record, Miles Ahead, Miles plus 19. But Johnny Carisi, I actually used to jam with Johnny Carisi at a place in New York in 1967, no, 68, 69. There was a place called Woody's and the Cafe London. And John Bunch was the regular piano player there, and a drummer named Maurice Mark, and Bucky Calabrese, and guys used to come and sit in there. And one of the people, Bob Duro, would fall by. Bill Rubenstein, a great piano player. I don't know if you knew Bill at all. He accompanied Carmen and Chris Connor, and but the main thing is that Johnny Carisi would come by and play. He would play trumpet there sometimes, so I got to hear him play and to meet him.
I don't know if you noticed on the wall, I have the original copy of Israel, Johnny Carisi's piece,
Wow.
right on the wall there.
Yeah.
Ah,
You want me to show you, Bob?
yeah, sure. Love to see it.
Hey, 1 second. I'll show you. Yeah, you're getting a little tour of the studio, but
You go to one of those places you saw there.
it's right.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
There it is
In his hand. Yeah.
in his handwriting.
Yeah. And I could show you some stuff later if you'd like to, but I mean, that's Max Roach, Stan Hasselgaard. There's Gene. There's a lot of, there's again, the same, there's Gene with Stan Hasselgaard and Max Roach and Chuck Wayne. There's a lot of the people that you've been talking about on the wall.
Wow.
Maybe I can give you a tour at the end, but I'll bring the computer
That's
back.
great. We could show that to people.
Yeah.
They love it. Well, Stan Hasselgaard was quite a clarinetist. He was a prodigy. I mean, a protege of Benny Goodman, I think, wasn't he? And
that's how I got to play with Benny Goodman, because the lady songwriter had a little misunderstanding with Benny.
lady songwriter, Dorothy, who was that?
The black lady piano player. You know who I'm thinking of?
Do you mean Mary Lou Williams? Is that
Mary Lou Williams. Yeah. Mary was playing with Benny Goodman in the studio. And Stan Hasselgaard was on the date. And she left the room because she was disgusted with him. So
Benny, yeah.
Hasselgaard called me at home in Brooklyn. Says, come to New York right away. You're going to play Steel and Apples with Benny. I said, okay.
Fletcher Henderson, too. Yeah.
8-year-old nervy kid, you know.
Don Redman.
Yeah. And I went to New York and recorded with Benny Goodman,
Wow.
1946 or 7 or 8 or in there.
And that's the record with Wardell Gray and Fats Navarro, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that band.
Yeah.
See,
That's how,
wow.
That's when
That,
Benny was trying to play bebop at that point.
yeah, he wanted to learn about bebop. That's right.
and you had also an experience with Artie Shaw
That's
of
right.
bebop. That's you know.
Invited,
Go ahead.
invited me to his apartment, the Beaux-Arts. It's fancy joint in New York. An arty condominium, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And he asked me to come there to teach him bebop.
Uh,
What was he doing with this 18-year-old kid? He was a giant, famous guy, you know.
yeah, and also,
I remember walking in, take my coat off, throwing it down. What do you want to know? You know.
well, you showed him the flat and fit substitution.
Curvy, you know. He went along with the gag, you know.
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, that's great." And he was going to start a big band, which Mandel was going to write for. I
Well,
didn't like the bass player, and I walked out of rehearsal. Another thing that I shouldn't have done. Anyway,
yeah, I wondered who that was, but Lee Koditz told me that he was talking to Artie toward at the end of Artie's career, and they talked about why Artie left music, and of course everybody knows the reason that he gave, which was having to play his old stuff and nobody being open to new stuff that he wanted to do, the innovations with the strings and that stuff. But what he told Konitz was interesting. He said he wanted to play like Charlie Parker, and he realized that he couldn't,
yeah,
that he couldn't understand the bebop concept enough to change his own style to adapt to that.
yeah,
And so I thought that was very interesting. It's sort of along the lines of what you say,
yeah,
because Bird loved Artie too.
yeah.
Chan has told me that Bird played Artie's version of Dancing in the Dark and Begin to Begin so often on the record player that Chan's mother wanted to move out. He was, and Bird was crazy about Artie Shaw, the way he played, especially his melody playing and his lines. I mean, he was more linear. I mean, Goodman was great, but a lot of arpeggios, where I always thought that Artie was more in the line of Lester and improvising, and what was so he was actually humble, Artie, toward you. I mean, wanting to learn from you.
Yeah, yeah, I showed him what a flatted fifth was.
That's what I thought you did. Yeah.
But he was very good about it. Another guy would have sent me to school, you know.
Right. Well, there's so many people. I mean, Joe Albany, I got to play quite well. Joe was in Boston when I was hanging out in Boston for a while, and he was doing a solo piano gig for 2 weeks at the Copley Plaza, and I came in almost every night to sit in with him. I'd listen to a set and then play 2 sets. He'd bring me up. He wouldn't let me leave, and I didn't want to leave. But I mean, we would play, and then we go and hang out in his hotel room till the sun came up. And Joe, besides being a walking pharmacy, was full of wonderful stories, and he was a lovely man. And I remember he told me once I was playing one wrong note on the melody of Autumn in New York. But why should it seem so exciting? Why does it seem? I was playing a G where it's an F if you're in the key of F in the arpeggio. And Joe said, man, you're playing this note. It's not part of the melody. The actual note is an F. I said, oh, thank you. He said, oh, yes, you play far too well to make that kind of foolish mistake.
Yeah.
And, but he had some changes to Yesterday's. I remember at Bradley's one night, Joe was definitely in the contest there for his Yesterday's changes, which was something. But there's some other people I really got to know about that who you knew. I'd like to talk about Dave Schildkraut.
Oh yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
mean, he is one of my real idols on the alto saxophone. For me, he was the cat that was right between Bird and Konitz in approach. And
Well, I have to tell you that Lee Konitz lived in my house in Brooklyn for a whole summer. A whole summer. He had 6 kids at that time.
oh man, I know he's still got
Doesn't
most.
talk about that though. He had 6 kids at my house in Brooklyn.
Oh my gosh, so he lived with you there.
And he ate a lot of pasta.
Yeah. Lee, for a lad, rather diminutive cat, could eat. I mean, he liked to eat. I was with Lee when I was 17. I met Lee. As a matter of fact, I used to sit in with Lee at the half note on a fairly regular basis. And that's where I got to know Chuck Wayne, because he and Joe Puma were
Yeah,
playing. There was a double bill with Konitz's quartet and Chuck Wayne and Joe Puma duo.
right.
And so I would hear Chuck every night. What an amazing musician he was. And, and so I got to know him too. He was a beautiful person. And I was 17 and had no idea why they let me play, but sometimes I would sit in with them too, and I got to play with Chuck a little bit. And what an education that was. But Konitz was
Yeah. He had a large sect, SECK, you know what I mean? A sect of people around him, mostly tenor saxophone players.
this was Konitz. You're talking about
Oh, Chuck. Chuck
Chuck.
had a bunch of tenor players who studied with him in
Oh,
Jersey. Jersey, yeah, not Staten Island, but Jersey. He lived in Staten Island all of his life.
Huh. Yeah.
well, getting back, I want to get back to Schildkraut, but then that made me think of
Yeah.
Brew Moore.
Yeah, well, he was going to come on the road to to St. Paul, Minnesota. Tiny, uh, Dave, uh, Don Fagerquist. We all went on the road with Anita O'Day, who was crazy.
I knew Anita well too. She used to let me sit in with her at the half note, and then I got some Anita stories too.
He was really nuts. But
Yeah,
she was talented, but she
Yeah.
was nuts.
she was pretty crazy. She was,
Yeah.
she and Roy Eldridge, they'd bring her in on the weekend at the half note to play with Roy, and it was really funny because they hated each other, and they would insult each other. I mean, she used language that, as a friend of mine put it, would shock a sailor. And she and Roy would be, you little, and this and that. And they'd be arguing, and I can't stand you, Roy. You're an obnoxious little blah blah blah. And they get on the bandstand and, hey, Roy, Anita, and like they were so professional. That was the meaning of professionalism, that people could hate each other that much and
Mhm.
love each other on the bandstand. I said these jazz people are very interesting.
Davy Schildkraut was off the wall somewhere, really, was he?
Well, he was talking to people from other planets when I met him. He was being regularly beamed up. He got a job for the Parks Department, and he said he was talking with these aliens,
Ah,
and they would probe him. He was telling me this stuff, but there was a tragic story of his later life. I think something took him out. That's why I'm asking you about him, because I didn't know him as a younger man. But when I met him, or I'll tell you my quick story of how I met him. I was at the Village Vanguard listening to Sonny Rollins, and it was the night I met Sonny Rollins. And Sonny and I were talking, and all of a sudden, Sonny's eyes left me and kind of looked over my shoulder and said, Davy. And my friend Tony Castellano of the Brooklyn Castellano piano playing twins, Tony
yeah.
and Bob, had said, when you go to New York, look up Davy Schildkraut, because he had an experience with Davy that was like tremendously positive. You'll love him, he'll love you. So I was going to call Davy. I had just arrived back in New York to live. I was 20 years old. And Sonny goes, Davy. And then Sonny says, excuse me. And he and Davy embrace. And Davy says to Sonny, so have you grown, Sonny? And Sonny says, yes, I have, Davy. And you? He says, I think I'm growing too, Sonny, you know, and this and that. So they talked for a minute, and then I introduced myself to Davy. And Davy said something interesting. He said, you see what Sonny does? He plays his own time. That's the thing. You got to play your own time. He says, I always played my own time feeling. Sometimes cats put me down for it. He said, but you got to go with your gut and go and play your own time feeling. So we arranged to meet. I said, could I study with you? Or, you know, he said, yeah. So he gave me his number. And I waited. I was moving back to New York. I'd been living in Boston. Anyway, I called him, and he was very abrupt. He said, I'm not talking to anybody. I'm glad you called, but I'm in no shape to do anything. And I didn't know. So then I asked Maurice Mark, the drummer. He was friends with Davey. I said, strange experience. Davey just hung up the phone on me. Yet he was so friendly when we met. What happened? And he said he had lost his daughter in a car accident, his teenage daughter. And and shortly after he lost his wife. And, that may be what pushed him kind of over the edge,
No,
'Cause-
I lost touch with him. He used to come to my cellar in Brooklyn.
But he also was somebody that was a pretty straight guy. Like somebody said that one of the reasons that he didn't continue with Miles, he made that beautiful solo on Solar that is like one of the classic alto solos, which was actually Chuck's tune called Sunny, which we got to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
But he had played this absolutely beautiful solo, and to me, it's like Furcella's "I'll Be Seeing You." Schildkraut's solo on Solar is that one great solo that somebody captured. Though he played a bunch of good solos on Handyland with George Handy as well. But what was Davey like? In other words, how strange was he as a young man?
Oh, he was a straight ahead kind of guy, He was a very traditional man. His family was important. So when we got to St. Paul, a couple of the guys in the group got busted. And then his wife was pregnant at the time, and she called up crying to him, and he left us. He just left the group and came back to New York.
Uh,
So that was Fagerquist and Davy and Tiny, but three of the guys were busted. The narcs knew where to come. They
what
didn't.
were they, was it just pot, or were they more of the heavier pills and powders and potions?
Oh yeah, no, he would never got into that. But also what it meant was we had to find a bass player, a drummer. There was an alto player replaced Davy, a guy named Bob Crea. And so we had to get in St. Paul, Minnesota, a bass player, an alto player, a couple of new guys.
That must not have been fun.
Yeah, no, but it was Jimmy Gurley. Do you know that name?
I worked with him in Paris,
Okay.
the guitar player from Chicago.
He got busted in St. Paul.
Really,
Yeah.
he wasn't my favorite human being, but he was all right. Uh, but he could play. And but I mean, was this well? I mean, what drugs are we? What are we talking about getting busted
For heavy stuff.
for the harder drugs? Yeah. And now was Tiny. Tiny died young, and
Yeah.
Tiny was a great genius. I really think he was somebody you could use the term genius for. And did he have? I know he was overweight, obviously, and he died of a heart attack. But a heart attack was often a euphemism for other things in those days. What was Tiny involved with drugs himself? And
Oh, he probably had legit drugs for his giganticness.
Mhm.
He was a doctor and was treating him at the time, I think, to lose weight.
Right.
So it could have been amphetamines or something like that, diet
Yes,
pills.
yes, definitely. No, he wouldn't have been a junkie.
No, that's what I mean. I was always wondering
No.
about his history.
Do
And
you remember Tom? Do you remember Tom Allison?
no, that name escapes me.
Don't remember that. With Buddy's band,
No,
Tom Allison was a beautiful trumpet player.
ah,
He was in that Buddy's band we were talking about. Yeah, Tom Allison.
Nice.
that's who you're searching
So
for.
many great guys who will never be known, except by you and me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a, well, Carisi is an example that, yeah,
Well,
other than writing Israel,
he's like an older Italian brother to me. But he studied with Stefan Volpe, who was
Right.
a heavyweight classical composer.
Indeed. Yeah.
yeah,
And
there was
I studied with him.
In New York.
he and Perez.
Well, he came from an interesting family. John did. His
John
father,
Allen.
his brother was Vincent Carisi,
Oh, John Carisi. Right.
civil engineer,
Oh,
and his father was F, into airplanes. In fact, was going to go up in the air before Lincoln, before the
The Wright brothers. Is that what you mean?
no,
oh, after that, I think.
who's the his Hitler's friend, Em,
Mussolini,
no,
Gehring. I mean,
American Nazi, flower
oh,
plant, Lincoln,
yes, Lindbergh.
Lindbergh, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Lindbergh.
right.
Lindbergh was so John's father made
Like a solo flight.
he was going to go off before him, but somehow he had trouble and he couldn't get off.
Huh.
And
Lindbergh.
Lindbergh
Yeah.
got the first shot at that wherever it was.
Huh.
But
Oh,
it
that,
was a brilliant family, including her.
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
Sonny Berman died in his apartment.
oh, and Sonny was involved with drugs, right? Sonny,
Sonny Berman,
Sidewalks of Cuba.
yeah.
Was that too with Woody? That was his feature. I remember that. Very interesting trumpet player. He didn't play like anybody. He sort of had some Fats Navarro, but he was really on the level with those guys. I think
Yeah.
what I heard.
There were a lot of Italian trumpet players too. The way there were a lot of piano players.
Yeah. What about what was Wardell Gray like? Did you get to know Wardell at all, or I heard he
No,
was kind of an intellectual type of guy.
quite young. He was on the one record we were talking about.
Right, that's what I'm thinking. Wardell and Fats.
Yeah,
What were they
that's
like? And what was it like to be with them?
Lester Young type player,
Right.
light, very light player.
Yeah,
And he was with
talk
Fats.
about music. Did they uh, like when you were hanging out with them? What did you guys?
No, they were bad boys. They were very bad boys. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and you really shied away, like Hank Jones. That was the same kind of thing with Hank. He just said
Well,
he turned down Charlie Parker.
I have nice memories of Hank because he was 10 years older than me.
Ah,
I am now, uh, how old am I
You're
now?
96.
96.
96, 26th.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about longevity too. This is how do you do it? You just stayed healthy, I guess. Did you ever smoke or drink, or you never smoked tobacco when the days when everybody was doing that?
I tried it, but I never liked it.
Yeah, because when you're growing up, you can't see a movie without people smoking through the whole thing. You know, it's like,
Or working in a club where they smoked in front of you.
yeah, well,
Plenty of that.
I smoked cigarettes for a long time, and I'm paying the dues. I got emphysema now.
And how did I get away with it in the clubs?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah, I mean, I know they were so smoke filled; it was incredible. You know, that was you know, something. The
What time, Jimmy? You doing okay? Do you want to?
okay, yeah.
Are you okay?
This is the Joe Marsala had a band in the Hickory House.
right,
Okay, that was
yeah,
his job.
clarinet player.
See, it was you know, the great steaks and chops and stuff was the Hickory House.
Yeah, I heard about the food.
Joe was married to Adele Girard, who was a harpist.
Oh,
The group was Joe on clarinet, Adele Girard, his wife, on harp,
oh,
Buddy Christian on drums, Clyde Lombardi on bass, and it's my first gig on 52nd Street. And I'm coming from Brooklyn every night and sitting on the bandstand and smelling these great steaks and chops. I'm sitting there. I got to eat after the first set. I go down and I eat a steak every day. I was the heaviest I ever was in my life. After the first set every night, I would eat a big steak
Nice.
with that band.
well, that
Same band that was at the place in Boston,
um,
Copley Terrace place.
Oh, Copley.
yeah, well, that was. I mean, they had real steaks then. I mean, I remember
Jessy was in that band in Boston.
Hmm.
who was in that band, Boston.
Neil Hefti.
Oh, Neil Hefti, he was there too,
Yeah,
and he was a
not
trumpet player
not in,
also, right?
not in New York, but in Boston.
Hmm.
Ah, that another person. I wondered about bass players. You know, did you know Teddy Kotick?
Yeah,
I kind of knew him toward the end of his days. Got to play with him a few times, and I found he was a really ubiquitous. He was all over the place in those days. I mean, everybody seemed to play with him, and
Bill, what's his name, covered it later. He's still to this day all on the U.S. on the Bill bass player.
Um,
Bill Scott Bill
I don't know. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
company.
Yeah.
and then Oscar Pettiford.
Oh yeah. Oh, I liked his playing. I learned a lot from him. He taught me don't try to be so hip all the time.
Huh.
Don't make fun of guys who you think are not playing the right kind of music. Uh, he said that's wrong. He said
Really?
if a guy, I don't care what style he plays, but if he plays well, you got to give him skin for that. You know.
Mhm.
This was to a very young white guy. This Oscar Pettiford teaching me verbally. You know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what an honor to be taught by
Yeah.
Oscar Pettiford because the guys from that era just say I've heard it said Oscar Pettiford, he was the state of the art.
Yeah.
The state of the art of bass playing was Oscar Pettiford.
Yeah.
And
He was lovely.
yeah, I think he was really head and shoulders above everybody of his generation.
Was
And,
it Pro that you're thinking of?
Bill Crow, yeah.
oh, Crow, I know him well. I've known him
Yeah.
my whole life.
Teddy Kotick was the Bill Crow, same type of people they played with.
Right, they did that. But you know, Teddy Kotick was in the early Bill Evans records. He's in some Horace Silver, and he and Bird, of course. There's a very nice, and he seemed to have above average technique. that Teddy sounded like he had been, you know, his notes were very clear. I've just always liked his playing, and
Yeah.
he was another madman. I
Well,
played with him.
the
But
bass took a lot of leaps forward, right up from Blanton, who started it all, as a good player, fine player, and it worked it up through the years because bass players used to get away with murder. They used to play like they were a bass drum.
Right.
Nobody paid attention to them.
Right.
right, they would thump the notes along.
And those guys started to play it like it was an instrument. The kinds of thing that Neil Swainson does without thinking now.
Yes.
Right. Well, after Pettiford and after Scott LaFaro, it took another leap, I think, in that direction. And then you had the Niels Henning and the George Mrazes.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And Neil's out of that school, beautiful player. And Kieran Overs is another one in Toronto who always knocked me out. I thought Kieran plays beautiful solos. Like I could listen to him play solos all night.
Yeah.
And,
I use only Dave and Neil for all my time here, I think.
Yeah. Dave Young and Neil Swainson are on most of Gene's Toronto records.
Right. I heard some of that. The thing with Joe LaBarbera and Neil, really, they sound great with you. You guys sound wonderful. And, that was, the other cat I was thinking about. And of course, I want to talk a little bit, if you got too tired, I want to talk about Peggy and Tony Bennett and Gene Kelly and some of your more Hollywood experiences. But while we're still on the Jazz Cats,
Yeah.
I got to know another person that was playing at the half note a lot in '68 when I was 16, and that let me sit in regularly was Brew Moore.
Yeah.
And he used to play this tune called Gene's Blues, which is ba 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 da da ba ba da da do da
Uh-huh.
ba da da dee ba da ba da boo be doo dee doo dee
Well,
dee da ba da dee dee
I recorded
dee
with
dee
him.
ba da ba do dee dee.
Yeah.
Was that for you?
No, mine was Brew Blue. All takes on his name.
Right, No More Brew. I know that record.
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
Brew, No More Brew.
Maybe it was Brew, yeah.
And those ones. Now, Brew Moore was an interesting cat in the sense that he was from Mississippi originally, right?
Right.
And did you know Johnny Robinson, who was his buddy, played drums with him?
He was a buddy of his, yeah.
Also a Mississippian. They would play together a lot. And anyway, Brew, when I met Brew, he had quit drinking because he'd had a serious alcohol problem while living in Scandinavia for many years, which I think Mother Teresa would have an alcohol problem if she lived in Scandinavia long enough. But I mean, that's just my opinion. But, so he was only drinking ginger ale at the half note. And he would let me and my friend Brooks Kerr sit in with him. And, he was very sweet and beautiful to me. He was going with Elaine Swain. First, people should know that Brew once made the statement, anybody who doesn't play like Lester Young is
Right.
wrong.
Yes.
And the woman he was going with was a woman named Elaine Swain, who had been Lester Young's last girlfriend.
That's the Young's girl first.
Lester Young's, right, the last girlfriend of Lester Young. And Brew picked up there, and that was his lady at the time.
Naturally, anything that had to do with Lester Young, he wanted to imitate,
Well, he did the complete, imitation, but he was a funny guy. He used to always introduce "There Will Never Be Another You" as the sheepherder's lament. I remember he liked to say that. But the way that he died, what story did you hear about that? I was kind of around, and I do recall the story, but did you hear anything about his death and
No.
how he went? It was the story that I've heard, and if there's anybody out there that can corroborate this or not, I just want to throw it out there if anybody is that. Now, Brew was very straight, no alcohol, no drugs, nothing. And he had been disinherited by his family, which was a pretty wealthy Mississippi family. But because he played the kind of music that he did, they had nobody had he had not gotten any family money. And but there was one aunt or something who liked him, and when she died, he inherited a bunch of money.
Wow.
Because I remember he told me he had an inheritance. That was the last time I talked to him. And then I heard that he decided to party and he went off the wagon. And that's the part I'm not sure about. But so I don't want to spread any bad rumors about him because I loved him. But the thing is that he fell down a flight of stairs while celebrating the receiving this money. And he died in the fall. And that's what I heard about him, you know, but
No, I didn't know about that.
yeah, but he was somebody that I know the records that's all. If you're playing, I knew that, you know, those records with him, and some other records have come out of him as well with Tony Frisella that were basement tapes and an alto player named Chuck something. Well, I can't remember the last name, but you know, but you know, I thought he played, you know, beautifully. And did you know? What about just one other thing with Zoot? You must have knowing Al had some relationship with Zoot as well.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know Zoot Sims, Gene?
Who's what?
Did you know Zoot Sims very well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know all the tenor players. And in later years, I've had Herbie Stewart.
Right. Yeah, Herbie Stewart, he worked a lot with later in life.
He was originally an alto player. Did he go back to alto or?
Well, but he was, Stan Getz loves his playing, you know.
Right. Yeah, Stan told me that he was the guy that he modeled himself in his early years after. And also, you know, since we talked about Prez, did you get like some of the older players, you know, Coleman Hawkins and you know, Don Bias, Ben Webster? Did you have some?
I recorded with Ben Webster.
So that must have been. He had quite a personality.
In L.A.
In Los Angeles, huh?
Yeah, with John A. Richards arrangement.
Oh,
yeah,
another very fascinating arranger.
yeah. Well, we did one with Ben Webster. And Don Bias, we admired. It was a wonderful player.
Yeah, he was.
I think we've covered the world here.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Sure, we could. Yeah, sure. Is that okay, Bob, to sort of leave it there for today?
Yeah, that's fine. We got to get into. Maybe we'll do one more. We can talk about your post New York life, you know, and also Peggy Lee,
Okay.
Tony Bennett.
Sure. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
You know,
Now,
Bob's in New York, but he was just saying maybe we could do another one at a
when he
later
comes
date.
back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to see any of the images, Bob? Should I show you anything of that stuff while we're here?
Yeah, let's do a little tour, Gene. It's
Can I
been
do that?
wonderful to talk to you. I'm amazed you've got the energy you do. I thought I was talking to somebody in his 40s.
So let me turn on a light and then I'll move the chair and then we can give a little tour. Don't worry, Jane. Let me just turn on an overhead light here.
Oh, I just wanted to know what tunes that Gene wrote that Peggy may have recorded. Does he remember?
What tunes that you wrote did Peggy record?
I can hear the music. And a very interesting LP. Oh, I can't think of it. Yeah, I can hear the music was the big one.
Yeah.
And speaking of I Could Hear the Music, we'd like to tell everybody that Gene has written an autobiography,
Yes.
which I can't wait to read. And there it's called I Can Hear the Music. And
Yeah.
Andy, it's published. This is, by the way, we're talking to Andrew Scott, who is a very fine writer. He, among other things, he's written the liner notes to my recent release, which is Concert in Salerno with Walter Davis Jr., and a number of articles. And he's also a fine guitarist.
Thank
So
you.
this is Andrew Scott, and he hooked this thing up when I'm so grateful to him for connecting us to Gene and everything. But
Yeah.
would you tell the publishing information about Gene's book?
Yeah, that's through Wattpad, right?
Wattpass, yeah.
Yeah, it's an online publisher. I mean, Gene wrote the book with Jack Batten, and it was published through Wattpad.
You can listen to it.
Yeah, it's got exactly. It's got an audio component too. Should we start at this wall, Gene, or this wall? Where do we start?
Um,
Maybe over here.
But by the way, Andrew and I are also working on my memoirs.
Yes.
We hope to also have as an audiobook as well. But let's see Gene's collection of this amazing life in
well,
pictures.
Mitsuo Jofu, my producer on so many
Yeah, that's Marshmallow Records, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's Mitsuo Jofu, and that's out at the Country House, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is Lenny Hayden.
Lena Horne's husband, wasn't he?
Right.
Yeah.
I learned a hell of a lot from this guy, yeah.
Yeah.
And let's see who else we got here.
Well, there's Glenn Gould in the Mount Pleasant Cemetery. Yeah.
Glenn Gould.
Yeah. There's Herbie
Okay.
Stewart. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's Herbie Stewart and Gene and Dave Young. And who's the drummer? Oh, Takeshi Igarashi.
You mean there's a record with Herbie Stewart later in life?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, I can't wait to hear that. That's exciting.
There's a bunch, and actually, Bob, that's on this cat's label. This person right here, Mitsuo
Yeah,
Jofu,
right.
who's a Japanese record producer, and had a label called Marshmallow that put out a lot of Gene stuff, but also the Herbie Stewart stuff as well with
I had
Gene.
one other question about Japanese labels. When I was looking at Gene's discography,
Yeah.
there's a number of records for Pony Canyon.
From who?
Pony Canyon?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Pony Canyon?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who's all in here, Gene?
Yeah, this is in front of the Three Deuces.
That's the Three Deuces.
That's with Max Roach.
And Max Roach, Stan Hasselgaard. Who else? Chuck Wayne.
Clyde Lombardi.
Clyde Lombardi.
Wow. Hasselgaard died young as well, didn't he?
Yeah, in a car accident, I
Clyde,
think.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, there they are. Oh, there's Tiny Khan.
Oh man, that's what he looked like.
Who's this, Gene?
Yeah. Billy Exner,
Billy Exner.
the drummer, who influenced a lot of people. And there's Joe Marsala.
Joe Marsala. There's Chuck. And who's this down here with you?
That's Red Kelly.
Red Kelly.
That's a funny story about him and Red Mitchell.
What's that?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? They used to live on 48th Street at a hotel there. Red Mitchell and Red Kelly.
Oh, really?
So somehow Red Norvo, another Red, picked up Red to go to a gig.
Well,
Turned out he took the wrong Red.
the wrong Red.
So Red Kelly worked with Reds with him for about 5 months.
That's very funny. Just down here, I'll grab this quickly. There's a beautiful picture of Gene with Ellington.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Did you
Well, I put my computer down, but
get to know what? Well, next time we'll talk about those circumstances.
yeah. And then maybe should we do this wall, and then we'll call it for today. Is that
I think that's good.
yeah? So
It's so agreeable, Gene. That's great.
So this was Gene's teacher, Mario Castanovo Tedesco, and there's Harry Warren.
Benny Carter.
There's Benny Carter,
Bobby Tucker.
Bobby Tucker.
As Dinah Shore.
That's Dinah Shore with Gene playing there. And actually, just quickly, sorry, just to go back, the sign, the photograph here, Bob, I don't know if you can see it. It says, "To my nephew Gene, your Uncle Harry." That's Harry Warren.
The great songwriter.
400 tunes.
400 tunes. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. And then, okay, well, why don't we call it there, and then maybe we can do this another time
All
to
right.
finish it.
yeah, Gene, I can't thank you enough.
Oh, I'm delighted to, you filled in a lot of empty spots
Nice.
for me.
And you for me. Next time I've got to find out who Billy Exner was, among other things.
Drummer with Claude Thornhill's band.
Oh, and that's another story too. Well, you've got so many. I'm glad we got to what we got to.
Okay, well, let's do it your next trip up.
Okay.
All
Okay,
right.
thanks, Bob.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew Scott. Thanks, Gene DiNovi. Thank you for watching. We would appreciate it if you would give us a like and become and subscribe. It's free to subscribe, and then you may want to become a member. We'll explain all that because we like to do this and we want to keep going. And I want to thank Jessy Kaiser as always for her, invaluable contribution and participation in this on the real side. So, really try to give us these likes because then in the cyber world, they do mean something and give us a chance to continue doing this, which we love doing. So we'll be back soon with another On the Real Side. We've got some wonderful guests coming up. And I thank you all, and God bless you, and see you next time.